Cloud. Awesome. Well, thank you so much and good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's discussion about the Israel-Hamas war. My name is Ana Milena Moreno, and I am the Community Engagement Coordinator with Norwalk ACTS. Tonight's presentation is hosted by the Center for Youth Leadership at Brien McMahon High School and presented by Norwalk ACTS. The Center for Youth Leadership, which is a student activism organization, uses public awareness activities, volunteer programs, and social change campaigns to address several social issues. Norwalk ACTS brings people and organizations together to improve and work on outcomes for children and youth along with the cradle to career continuum. Our collective impact work is rooted in the belief that no single organization alone can create large-scale, lasting social change on its own. The role of Norwalk ACTS is to act as a neutral convener and to facilitate and create space to have difficult conversations. Our civic engagement is a core value of our work, and we are grateful for our youth who have answered the call to serve our community. This is a listening session for the audience, and we thank you all for being here. And now here's Roshni with the Center for Youth Leadership.
Thanks, Ana Milena. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a discussion that continues to impact the lives of many students in Norwalk. We thought we'd talk about the Israel-Hamas war on 3 angles. 1, where people our age get information about Hamas's attack on Israel, the situation in Gaza, and the conflict's roots. 2, what people our age have thought, felt, discussed, and wondered about since Hamas's attack on Israel and Israel's response. And 3, the roles that high schools play in response to world events, especially those that are traumatic. Joining me to talk about these and other questions are Jaya, Ben, Raisa, and Ashlyn. Let's start with how we collect information about the war. Here's Jaya.
Thank you, Roshni. According to a recent report from the Pew Research Center, 33% of teens in America say they almost constantly use YouTube and TikTok for news and information, a reality that undermines cooperation and good citizenship, which educators say are essential to solving global problems. So let's answer these questions. 1, how closely have you been following the news about the war? 2, where are you getting your information? 3, how do you know that what you are seeing and hearing is accurate? And 4, what kind of conversations have you had with friends and family members on this subject? So let's go back to question 1. How closely have you been following the news about the war? Opening the floor to anyone who wants to talk. Raisa?
So honestly, I personally haven't really been keeping up with it, but I do look at the news and see like the most recent updates, the general idea of what's been going on. And yeah, I get a lot of my information from like, friends and family, people from school. It's a very hot topic that's been going around, and like we do talk about it like within my friend group. So that's honestly how I've been following the news. I'm honestly not a person that personally like is very like focused on politics going on in the world, but I do know, some information from the news, what my dad tells me, and like yeah, talking with friends.
Okay, thank you. Question 2, where are you getting your information? Ben, do you want to answer that?
I've been getting like most of my information from the posts that like some of my friends have made about any updates about sort of what's been happening, what Israel's been doing, what Hamas has been doing, and what's been going on in general.
Okay, thank you. Question 3, how do you know that what you are seeing and hearing is accurate? Ashlyn, if you want to answer that.
So I don't for sure know that anything I see or hear is accurate, especially because my source for getting the news a lot is my friends reposting like a news article or something, and sometimes that's a credible source, but I'm not going in and I'm not fact checking it and like seeing that this information is actually credible. And I think that like it what you see and hear being accurate all depends on where you're getting information from. And when people are getting their information from social media, it's not always going to be accurate, unfortunately.
Yeah, and like to go off of that, I definitely agree with that because everyone always has a bias, so you can never tell like what the real news is, and also like getting your sources from news channels, they always are sometimes they're always like they have a bias. So like that dictates like what they share to people, to the public, and that's what I always think about when looking at the news, and like especially like talking about social media, like TikTok and YouTube, all these creators they're kind of it's really hard to find a source that unbiasedly shares information, you know? So you always have to be careful of that and always like thinking about like, is this really accurate or not?
Yeah, that's totally true. Ben, did you have anything to add about like what you feel about the information that you receive, the accuracy of it? Care to share?
I definitely feel like a lot of see what I post is mostly just one-sided. It's mostly just stuff that I find a lot of it is like what's been happening to the Palestinians and a lot less about just what's been happening on like both sides. And so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to question 4. What kind of conversations have you had with friends and family members on this subject? Ashlyn, if you want to start that.
Well, a lot since I am Jewish, a lot of the conversations I've had with my friends and family on the subject are mostly pro-Israel conversations because Jewish people tend to be pro-Israel. And so a lot of the conversations I'm having are just like, it's a lot of like, oh, Israel's not in the wrong, and I don't agree with that statement. There's a lot going on, and it's a very one-sided conversation whenever I have it with the people around me, just because of the community I'm in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm a Muslim, so like it's very pro-Palestine. And like usually when I'm talking to my parents about it, they're like they definitely have a side, but then like at the end of the day, I bring up the idea like, oh, there's conflict going around in like both sides. There's like killing, the bombing, and like people are being killed on both sides. So at the end of the day, like we're all humans, and like it would be great to like stop the conflict altogether, but there's so much history behind it. So it makes it more like complicated than it really is.
Yeah, and just to add on to the conversations that's happening, I do think there is an impact from what you're exposed to based off of like the friends and family, even like the culture and background. So, for me as a Muslim as well, I'm typically mostly surrounded by more one-sided conversations that are, typically pro-Palestinian, and I'm not always exposed to, sources that come from maybe Jewish sources and stuff like that. And recently, I kind of um, tried to look on the internet about like sources that I figured were, you know, uh, sources from Palestinian sources, and then sources that were Israel sources, and I noticed differences in like the ways the story was being told, whether or not one is more true or not. I think it's important to be exposed to both of them. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting conversation.
I also like agree because when I was finding out about the attack, I was up with my Jewish side of the family, and so a lot of my family at the time they were saying that there's like no justifiable cause or reason for the attack. And then later, as the time went on, and I was with more of like the side of my family that wasn't Jewish, it was more just a realization that like it's less about it's less about just is like pro-Israel. It's more just like there's a lot of going on both sides, and it's really complicated, and it's a lot of bad just in general. It's not like one side is right or wrong.
Yeah, of course. And like adding on to like what all of you guys have been saying, like when I first heard about what was going on, like personally, I was hearing like stuff that was very pro-Israel. So I didn't really like think much of it, but then when I started to hear stuff that was pro-Palestine, I started to like get confused. I started to think like, oh, like which side is right, which side was wrong. And it took me a long time to realize like I don't have to pick a side in this situation. Like that was something I was struggling with for a very long time. And I eventually like came to the conclusion that like I'm not gonna pick a side in this because I personally like what Risa was saying, like people are getting innocent people are getting killed on both sides. And I feel like there's a lot going on at the moment and there's a lot of harm being done to both sides to innocent people. So um I just feel like the best thing we can do in this situation is like be kind and like be compassionate to other people and just try and like see both sides of the situation and like respect other people's like opinions.
Yes, these
Yeah,
are all,
sorry.
sorry about that,
Yeah,
Rice.
I definitely agree with what Jay is saying. And like there's also that peer pressure with people who may be like more passionate about the subject and they're like it's not a bad thing. People always have their reasons for why they believe in certain things, and that's totally valid. But then also like being open to conversation is like a whole different thing. Like listening to argue or like listening to actually understand someone else's perspective. That's also something that I believe is very important for people to have. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your answers, guys. And yeah, I do think that it's important that to an extent it's a a safe space for people to share their honest reactions and thoughts, but also making sure that we are keeping an open mind about other people's thoughts and opinions and just being open to discussion. Yeah, so thank you. Let's turn our attention to our feelings about the war by answering these questions. What is your reaction to Hamas's attack on Israel and Israel's response? What emotions, feelings, and thoughts are you experiencing? Um, I can open it to the floor, whoever wants to jump in.
I definitely like remember when I first heard about the attack. It was definitely a lot of just thinking that there is no like reason for this, and then Israel decided but then in response bombed the Gaza Strip, and and it's also just like there's really no justifiable reason for both actions on both sides of the war. And so for me it was just like it felt like it was like a lot of just bad, and it was like it just felt like it was just really bad, and it was like scary because a lot of people were getting killed, innocent people who were just trying to live out their like normal daily lives, and it was just that.
Yeah, and for me, when I heard about what was going on, I guess I was a little surprised, even though I know this conflict has been going on for a while, and it's not like one side hasn't attacked the other um recently. Like they actually, there has been, certain exchanges, certain violent exchanges, even, in the last few months before this kind of like October 7th, I guess you could say, if I'm not wrong. But then I noticed like after it kind of all went down, it was so like heavily reported. So I realized like maybe the scale this time around is much higher than it was for a while now. And so I was just surprised. I kind of couldn't believe it, even though we are all kind of aware of like the history of this conflict. And overall, I was just feeling like, I can't believe this is happening. I was so sad because I know a lot of the sources that were coming out were very graphic and very descriptive, and so it was hard to ignore. And really, I was very emotionally distraught and stuff like that because, as a Muslim, hearing just personally, just hearing the fact that a group kind of, citing our religion to do very violent acts was very disheartening. So that was my response, really. And right now, I'm doing a little bit better in terms of my emotional and mental health. I'm just making sure I am staying informed in a way that I am not sort of wallowing in like a very dark place, but trying to stay informed because it's important, but also taking care of my mental health and not like exposing myself to too much, but also staying informed. Um, yeah, does anybody else want to talk about this question?
Yeah. I was very kind of like confused. It felt like there wasn't a right opinion to be had. It felt like any side I took, anything I said would be argued, and there just like wasn't a right opinion to have. And I just kind of took the opinion of like terrorism is bad. You shouldn't like just go that was my opinion. And it was confusing to like have people and like that I'm like friends with and I'm like close with um have a differing opinion and like not like mine. And I was like, I don't that like my opinion wasn't directly supporting Israel, and I don't think that a lot of the people I'm surrounded by liked that. And so it was just confusing and kind of isolating to have this opinion where it didn't feel supported by anybody. Um and I hadn't been following the conflict. And so when October 7th happened, when I got the news, I thought that it was just like more fighting. I didn't understand the severity of the situation because I hadn't been following it for very long. And over time, I realized how severe the situation actually was. And I think the way that I've been like protecting my mental health and being emotionally okay is by like just being like not everybody like it's and everyone doesn't like terrorism. Basically, it's just I'm like not everyone hates me because of my opinion. I'm just like trying to like think of it that way, kind of.
Yeah, and kind of like to add on to this question, this is a more general question, but do you guys feel safe as of now? And you can, yeah, kind of take this question however. Raisa, do you care to contribute to that question? Are you muted? Um, yeah, Ben, do you have anything to say about that question?
I'm still trying to think about whether or not it's like it feels safe or not, because it's something that's definitely, it's just we don't know what's gonna happen next, and so we don't know how far this is gonna extend to, or what, or like how many lives are gonna be lost, and so, or like what countries, if there's gonna be any other countries that this is gonna extend out to. And so it's definitely like it's really it's, in my opinion, it feels very complicated to answer that question because we just don't know what's gonna happen.
Sure, yeah. There's like, always new developments and everything. Um, and I would say for this question, I'm not Palestinian, but I am a Muslim. And in the beginning, when, after October 7th, a few people in like school kind of reached out to me to ask me if I was okay. And that was interesting because I didn't realize that, um, just even though I wasn't Palestinian, I guess the fact that I was Muslim, was enough reason to, ask if I was okay, this and that. And as I found that comforting, at the same time, I also felt like, oh, I have this need to be informed, this need to have to like deeply know about this conflict. And I felt not unsafe because I would say, personally, I don't feel like in danger or anything like that, but definitely a little bit on edge sometimes when people bring up the conflict and what I'm supposed to say. what I'm supposed to, how I'm supposed to act, I guess. So that's kind of how I feel. Jaya, do you have anything to add about this?
Um, I think like me personally, I mean, I've sort of like I guess if you're asking, I mean, with like my surroundings, I've always felt like I've never felt threatened by anybody else, thankfully, because like I mean, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Muslim, but I mean, I think sort of like how I've been like dealing with all of this is like I am very close to people who are Jewish and very close to people who are Muslim as well. So I've sort of been like checking in on them, making sure they're okay and like talking to them about how they feel about the situation, which has also like helped me learn more about the situation myself and like help me just like sort of understand more about it, getting like different viewpoints. And I've also just like I've seen people who are like more educated on the topic versus people who like aren't, which has been like super interesting. But I guess sort of like how I've been like handling my own emotions is sort of like reaching out to other people and also just like I mean it's a sensitive topic for me just because like I know people are getting hurt and that's just very like difficult for me to hear. But I try to just like reassure myself that like it's going to be okay and like the best that I can do is just like make sure other people are okay because I know it's a lot more difficult for other people. And so yeah, but I mean it's definitely a little scary to like wonder about what might happen in the future, like if this is gonna spread to other countries or if this is gonna get even worse than it already is. But I mean in regards to like my surroundings, I've felt safe. And I want to like ask a question to Ashlyn. I was wondering, have you ever personally talked to anyone who's Muslim about the situation?
I don't actually, there's like one or two people who are Muslim that I know and I go to school with, and I just know them. I don't really interact with them, and I haven't had any personal or one-on-one conversation with them. Um, I know for a fact that they're very pro-Palestine in the sense that one of them went to a pro-Palestine rally in New York and the other one was trying to get a bunch of pro-Palestine stuff put up at school. But I have not had a one-on-one conversation.
Okay, and also, uh, if you want to answer the question about, whether or not you feel safe and however you interpret that question, please go ahead.
Yeah, so after the one incident at school where she was trying to get pro-Palestine stuff put up at school, it kind of got into a situation where she had a couple of kids in my class start like yelling free Palestine, and it was like I was like, okay, like you do what you want, but it was a little bit unsettling in the sense that I had listened to the situation that was going on in my class the entire period, and basically the kids that participated in it had no idea what anything about like what free Palestine meant. They didn't know what any of it was, and they just she was like reading off like statistics to them about Palestinians killed and stuff, and reading off organizations like Starbucks that support Israel, and they immediately like just sided with that. Like there was no other information that they needed. That was all they needed, and that was a little unsettling that these people I go to school with were just so uneducated and were so quick to take whatever side they heard. So that made me feel a little unsafe, but I didn't feel like threatened or anything. I didn't think that I was going to be harmed mentally or physically.
No, that's definitely understandable because, yeah, I definitely get what you're feeling. Um, Me personally, thankfully at our school, like honestly, no one talks about it like at all. So I haven't had to deal with any of that. But I kind of like similar to what Roshni was saying, I had a couple of teachers like come up to me and ask if I'm okay. But again, like I take the side that like Jaya was talking about. It's um just like um not agreeing with the attack in general. You know, we're all humans at the end, and like war is war. But also like what Roshni was saying about feeling the pressure to be educated. I do get a I do get a little like not stressed but worried that if someone who's like very passionate about the topic comes to talk to me and like what am I gonna say? Like do they expect me to be like pro-Palestine or what? But I've kind of I guess this has made me like kind of avoid taking a side and all that. So yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Um and like similar to what Ashlyn was saying earlier, like how people just like are so quick to like jump to the side that they like hear. I mean, this does happen like personally in like the classroom, like at least with me. I've like when this was first going on, our teachers were like talking to us about this, and there were just like there were some like people in my class who either who just like immediately sided with Israel, and the things they said to like back up their like viewpoint were just like they were just like so inaccurate. So I feel like those people were just like going with what they heard in the beginning, because at that point is when all the pro-Israel stuff was going out because it was so early with like the conflict. So I just and then like people hear about and then I heard people say stuff that were very pro-Palestine. So I feel like people just um take the side that they hear without like getting fully educated. And I want to ask Roshni and Raisa, like the question I asked Ashlyn earlier, like similarly, have you guys talked to any Jewish people about the conflict?
For me personally, I didn't really have like a discussion about the conflict itself. Mostly it was a more I guess healing conversation, if you could say, for me, and Risa, one of our English teacher, she's Jewish, and so she took the time to have a conversation with the class, and just reached out and asked if how we were doing and everything. So it was a discussion about the conflict, but it was focused around what I hopefully feel this forum is kind of about, just letting students share their thoughts, letting students feel that it's okay to share how they think and hopefully feel supported, or we can find ways to um, be supported by, the school system, Norwalk, um, in general. And also, I've had conversations with a few students, and mostly, a Jewish friend was sharing with me about, I guess, they were having a vigil at their, they were holding a vigil or something of that nature, and they're sharing with me their feelings and how um, it's affected their community, like um, all the deaths and everything going on. And so, yeah, I just made sure in those moments to have compassion and try to not create a, I guess, debate, and more of just like a realization that we're both kind of dealing with loss and stuff like that. Because I know a lot of Jewish students, they also have like family and friends in Israel. And while I don't really know any Palestinian friends, um, I, you know, I understand that there are people with family and friends affected on both sides. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Roshni. I really appreciated how like at least some of my teachers actually took the time to, address the conflict instead of like the majority at our school who just like brush it under the rug and like not even mention it, and to show that there is support within the school. and that there are teachers who you can talk to, and they like made it obvious that if you need help, that they'd be willing to listen. And I believe that's really important to show students, because if it's not talked about, then how are they going to find support if they're having, a hard time? So, and like I honestly personally haven't talked about the war with any Jewish friends of mine, but I agree with what Roshni was saying about showing compassion. That's very important. And like listening, not to argue, but to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially during times like these, it's very important to just show your support and like show that you're there to listen. Like I mean, me personally, I mean, I go to CGS and so we had our own like when the conflict had first started happening, we had our own like sort of like forum, I guess you could call it, where the principal and like some other staff members came up and just showed like all CGS students like a series of Google Slides presentations, just like highlighting the history of the conflict and um just sort of like letting us know that like if we needed support or if we needed someone to talk to about it, like um or just like anything in general that like we could go to any of the staff in the school, like, our guidance counselors, anything like that. So I feel like that's definitely super important for like, not just like teachers, but like school staff in general to let their students know that they're here for support and like really encourage them to reach out if they're having a hard time talking about it. And like while we're on that topic, like I was wondering, Ashlyn, like I know, so like I was curious how like your religious community, like I know you're involved in BBYO. I was wondering how they like responded to the situation, if they like said anything at all.
It was a lot of support for Israel. There were I'm in charge of planning community service projects, so a lot of our attention got focused on how can we help Israel. And internationally, BBYO launched a bunch of different ways to fundraise through like Jewish federations for Israel and stuff like that. And a lot of um chapters around Connecticut started working with Israelis in their community with how they can help. And we also had an event shortly after October 7th, and we took some time to like talk about what happened and like offer support and like a safe space for anyone who felt like they needed to talk about it.
That's
I was,
great. Ben, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, like, I also, another thing I think is really important, because this is something my school did, is that they let the students know that it is okay for them to feel what they feel, and that they shouldn't feel any pressure into picking one side because of what their friends tell them or what they hear. Because if they feel like they don't want to take a side because to them it's all bad, and they're feeling pressure, and like they're feeling like it's okay to like not take a side, because it's a lot. And I think it's something students need to know, that whatever they feel is just, it's okay to feel, and they shouldn't feel pressured into choosing something.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And similarly to what I asked Ashlyn, I invite Roshni and Raisa, like, have your guys' religious community like responded to this at all?
Um, so this is a unique situation. I mean, currently, um, we do have a bit of a interesting situation in like the Muslim community in Norwalk, at least. I don't know about like Connecticut in general, but right now we have like two like separate entities kind of like Muslim. We had like a the Al Madani Mosque in Norwalk, and then there was recently some, uh dispute in leadership and this and that. So while there's no like formal statements or actions taken that I know of, I do know that individually, a lot of like Muslim people in my community have, maybe made social media posts or spoken openly about their feelings. And that's really all I can say to that extent, because right now, we're not as organized in creating like a communal response, which is pretty unfortunate, because it would be great to come together in this moment of like, I guess, hardship for the community. Because I know like on both sides, I feel like there has been some like, there has been a great rise in like anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which is very I think community is very important when those things occur. So yeah.
I do know that um they a Muslim community they protested in front of City Hall, I believe, to show support to Palestine. Um, but also like on this topic of like Islamophobia and all that, like as we know, the US has like shown support for Israel, if I'm not wrong, or correct me if I am wrong. So it's like I know that some in the Muslim community may feel a little attacked or like not attacked, but like not supported because America is a very diverse country. So it's like to be like show their support and also like come together as a community. Um, that was mainly what the and to show like support for Palestine. That was the main purpose of the not protest, but to show support. But yeah.
Okay, great. And with this, we're gonna move on to our final segment tonight, talking about the response of schools to the war. So UPenn, Harvard, and MIT have been in the news of later, but so too has news about the high school teachers union in Oakland, California. To superintendents in Massachusetts, tensions at a high school in Queens, New York, and the statement released by two student groups at a high school in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. According to many, the chief concern of educators is that turmoil happening outside of the classroom directs resources away from the critical conversations around Israel and Palestine that should be taking place in classrooms. According to a professor of educational leadership at Virginia Commonwealth University, if teachers pretend that things like the Israel-Hamas war are not happening, students become disengaged. Here are the words of a parent of an 8th grade student in Atlanta. I wish the district had put something out there that made my daughter feel seen and like she had someone for support.
And then you have Connecticut. On October 10th, the Commissioner of Education sent a memo to high school superintendents titled Conflict in the Middle East. This memo includes links to several resources about children, war, trauma, and violence. It also included resources that address trauma, violence, and grief in the aftermath of a mass shooting. And here are some questions to answer based off of this. Should schools give students opportunities to explore their feelings about the war? Should school districts and boards of education issue public statements about the war? And if students are encouraged to stand up and speak out for those in need, said the teacher, the grown-ups should be able to do it too, right? So these are these three questions that we have. I guess to go to the first one, should schools give students opportunities to explore their feelings about the war? I wonder what we think about this. We can start with Ben. Do you have anything to say about this?
I do think this is that students should be allowed to explore because it's a lot of history, and I think I personally think that the best, or like outside of watching like news, but the thing about news is that as mentioned before, news tend to have a bias. So to look through school to find about any possible ways to see if there's they can find information there, is I think like something that could be really important for students, and I think it's just something that like students should be like allowed to yeah, they should be allowed to explore at schools.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that schools should give students opportunities to express their feelings about the war because I feel like it would definitely be beneficial to students who like on either side like on either side like to just express how they're feeling. I feel like it would definitely be beneficial for students' mental health and to sort of educate people who maybe don't know as much on the topic. I feel like it would definitely help everybody. However, I definitely feel that if students want to give, I mean, sorry, if schools want to give students opportunities like this, then there definitely have to be like some rules in place because I definitely feel like if it's just like a free for all, everyone's allowed to like say whatever they want, it could definitely end badly. So I feel like if students, I mean, oh my God, sorry, if schools want to give like students opportunities to explore their feelings, I feel like it should definitely have some rules or like some sort of like guiding questions with it, but I definitely think it's a good idea and that it would just like help everybody.
Yeah, of course. And Ashley, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I think that it's important for any student right now, just because this isn't like a situation that any of us have navigated emotionally before. And school is a place that all of us are at 180 days a year, unless we're like sick or something, obviously. But we're always there. It's just we should have the opportunity to share our feelings about a situation that's so new to us and that's very dividing and stressful and isolating in a place where we're at constantly. And I think that schools should give those opportunities and encourage students to express that.
Yeah, and if that is what everybody has to say about that question, we can move on to the second one. Should school districts and boards of education issue public statements about the war? This is definitely an interesting question. Um, who does anybody have anything off the bat that they want to say about this?
Could I?
Sure.
Okay. So honestly, what I believe is that school districts should understand that they have students who are, you know, on both sides of the war, if you can say, from both Israel and Palestine, and understanding that like each student has their own unique, you know, circumstance going on, whether it's like at home or, based off of their religion or where they're from. So understanding that they should be able to tell their students that they should feel safe at school and that there is support for them whenever they need it. So it definitely should be addressed, and that like there are people at school who are able to support them, because I believe it's also a school's job to be able to make sure students feel safe enough and like they feel their school is supporting them so it doesn't affect their education. Because, if you're mentally not doing very well, it's a school's job to, not doing well enough to, and it's like interfering with your education, is important for schools to address that.
I agree a lot with what Raisa said. I mean, she pretty much like summed up like everything. But I mean sort of like adding on to it, I definitely believe that school is definitely a place where students should feel safe. And I feel like with what's going on, some people may not feel safe. And I definitely feel like if the issue isn't addressed, students are a lot more likely to feel unsafe because they just like they don't know what's going to happen if like if a school like doesn't address it, then like people are just gonna like brush it off and pretend nothing's happening. But I feel like if the school addresses it, it would sort of like let all the students know that like the school is there to support, which is really like which is really the school's job. Like, you're supposed to feel safe at school, you're supposed to feel seen and heard at school, and like someone's there to support you. And I definitely feel like if school districts put out public statements about the war, it would definitely help students feel understood and like somebody is listening to them. And I was curious, Ashlyn, I know you go to like P-Tech and at Norwalk High. I was curious if your school has issued anything about the war.
No, not like the principals and staff haven't released any statement. I know at Brien McMahon there was some kind of announcement over the loudspeaker. We've gotten nothing. There's like no email and there's like no announcement over the loudspeaker. Which is a little upsetting to hear. It's like I feel like my school kind of just thinks if they say nothing, then that's better than taking a side and it like them getting attacked by like parents and students for it. And to answer the second question of should they issue public statements, um it's not the job of a school district or a school administration or a board of ed to make a political statement and pick a side in a war. That's not their job. Their job is to educate students. And if they're going to issue a public statement, it should have to do with what they're doing, which is educating their students. It should be something educational. Should be something that lets a student from any side, whether they're pro-Palestine, pro-Israel, or like they just don't know what's going on, the school should let them know that they have a safe space to talk about it freely at school.
Yeah, and Ben, do you have an answer to this as well?
Not really. Everything was kind of summed up with the responses.
Yeah, of course. And I also feel similarly to you guys. Like, I think it's, the school doesn't have to take a side or anything, because they should understand that they have students who, are Palestinian or Israel. I mean, are from it, or, are Jewish or Muslim. And so I feel like making a statement is important to make sure that those people feel supported. But I think the statement should be around supporting them mentally, emotionally, and also um, maybe even providing support for them to, come to their own conclusions about things. And the interesting thing that you guys were talking about a few minutes ago, like how people kind of just jump on a train supporting one side or the other, whether that be through what they're exposed to, kind of just going with the flow and just like following, I don't know, friends or whoever they've heard for the most part. And so I think it is important for students to make their own opinions about things. And so with that, if anybody has anything else to say, can do that. But if not, the third question is, if students are encouraged to stand up and speak out for those in need, said a teacher, then grown-ups should be able to do it too, right? What do we think about this question? Everybody can answer, so,
I would like to start this off by saying, like, honestly, I've never really thought about this question, but it's really thought-provoking when, like, right now as it's being asked, because, like, initially, I believe that teachers should focus on facilitating, like, a conversation with students where they're able to, share their thoughts and opinions, but also make it not like, again, making it a safe space for students to share their ideas, but also understanding the need to be, sensitive. But like going to the point of should adults be able to, share their opinions too? I believe it should be focused more on the students, but teachers are, you know, allowed their opinions, but focusing on the students' needs more so, if that makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense. And I guess for me, I would say, um, you know, I feel as though, adults and teachers do have a right to share, and to have an opinion about this conflict. But I would say we have to keep in mind of the dynamic that students and teachers have, or students and adults in the building, because, students can see teachers and adults as maybe sources of information or supports, or, something like of authority, I guess, and that kind of role plays a part in how students take and maybe even like, obtain those like feelings. So I think I think like adults can share their opinions and also facilitate a conversation around it. So I think it's a kind similar to what we said about how students should conduct themselves, just be open-minded and also allow their students to openly have and hold their beliefs as well. So, Ben, do you have something to add on to this?
I think that they have to be very that they should be like you guys said, they should be allowed their opinion, but they also have to be kind of careful with what they say, because once again, like you guys mentioned, it's the students who they might and like who they might state the opinions towards, they might be sensitive in their feelings and their and mentally and emotionally. And I also think that it should be focused on the students, because teachers are they're the educators, and so I think students might feel pressured into choosing the side that the teachers give, because their job is to educate the students. And so because their students might feel like, because my educator is telling me that they support this side, I might feel a need to support the same side as them.
Yeah, and Ashlyn, what do you have about this question? I guess anything to say?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think that like teachers and school staff and administration have a responsibility to like take a position on a war and announce it to their students. I think that their focus should be on educating their students and giving them a place where they can talk about it. And I think that if a teacher openly takes a side, then that could, if a student needs someone to talk to and that teacher was the person they were going to talk to, and suddenly that teacher has a completely different opinion from them, that student may suddenly feel like they don't have anyone to talk to. Teachers can say whatever they want, but I mean, not whatever they want, but that teachers can say whatever they want about the war. They should just be mindful about what they're saying, and that they are influential on their students, and that their students are going to take that not with a grain of salt. They're going to think about that.
Yeah, I agree. I also feel like the conversation shouldn't be like almost forced in a way. Like, since we're talking about this, I don't want to like suddenly see like every teacher kind of like, I guess, like trying to have a conversation about it, but you can clearly tell that maybe higher ups have told them to like address it, and it's not very like fluid and like natural. So yeah, I think that if it does come up, or if maybe the teacher realizes that there is some like feeling in like the room, or if like the school, I think what happens is like if the school doesn't like make a statement about like supporting students, which I personally feel that they should at least do, because there are students affected by this. I think the roles that teachers play in addressing the conflict is a little bit more heightened, and I don't think it should be, because teachers can sometimes be their own entity, and not really and they have their own personal opinions, and which is great and fine. And basically I echo what you said, Ashlyn. So I also agree with your point of view. Yeah, is there anybody else who wants to add on to this?
Um, I I mean, you guys pretty much summed it all up, but I really like what Roshni was saying about how it should be like, or I mean, I guess what everyone was really saying about how it should be focused on the students, which which I definitely agree with. I feel like the student should be the main focus in this because and I feel like everyone should, like I said before, feel like they can go to anyone for support. And I feel like if the teachers like speak out and say like hey, this is like everyone's having a difficult time, and if the teachers say like how they're like personally affected by it, I feel like that will make students feel like they can like share how they feel to other people as well. But I don't feel like teachers should like push their views on their students. I don't feel like anyone should be pushing their views on anyone, but I do feel that teachers should set an example for students to feel like they can talk to people about it. And I feel like teachers sort of like not like expressing their views, but sort of just like saying like how they feel about it, like maybe saying how it's impacted them will sort of like maybe sort of like motivate students to like do the same, which can be really good. And if anyone has anything like quick they want to add, they can. But if not, so that's it for our discussion. We want to thank the audience for joining us, and we thank Norwalk ACTS for providing us with the platform to share our voices. And we hope you guys enjoy the holiday break and have a good night.
Thank you.